Inis, Commander G. is Mission Macho Freilon, as Mission Moontor Gale Gan Show in Ashfield College. But welcome, Falcha Fear or her of Gochdin and Show, August Tassuragum go my rogue Galliv Screwdu, Screw the Ha, August Gamay on Kiakcho more Hakiactive, Agashiv, like Ulvu, Agorna Screw the. So I'd just like to welcome you to this session. Last minute preparations for Junior Cert Higher Level Irish, and hopefully you can take away some useful tips that will help you in the exams in the coming days. So first of all, I'd just like to take a look at the marking scheme and take a look at some issues to do with timing and exam technique to make sure that you're fully aware as to what the exam entails and how much time perhaps you should be spending on each part of the exam, because timing is very important. So first of all, paper one. Now paper one is 2 hours in length. That's obviously 120 minutes, and the first 20 minutes of that are taken up by the Clustishkent, or the listening comprehension, which is worth 14 marks or 16% of your exam. It's well worth getting a bit of practice in on this. Even last minute practice will be very, very useful, and we'll be taking a look at that in a couple of minutes. The remainder of the 100 minutes for paper one, which you'll do immediately after your Clustishkent, is broken up into basically 3 different parts. Your Leibhishkin section, which comprises of 2 reading comprehensions. Your Trilika Changa Kohik Sula, again, 2 different styles of questions there. And the last bit there is your Capadorot, which comprises of the essay or alt, and then you have options B, which is the scale or the actra, agus option C, which is the diasporot or oroid. We'll take a look at that in time as well. Basically, the timing that you need for these particular exams, with 100 minutes to play with, realistically, your Leibhishkent, if you can aim for 20 minutes per Leibhishkent, you'll be doing yourself a huge favour, because your Capadorot is obviously the largest section here, worth 50 marks in total, 21%. And of that 50 marks, for that 50 marks, realistically, you will need anything between 45 minutes, perhaps to a full hour to do it. So saving time in the Leibhishkin section and the Trilika Changa Kohik Sula, it's going to be of huge benefit to you when you get around to the Capadorot section, particularly for planning and for writing that story or that diasporic debate, or indeed the ashta or the alt, which is the essay or the alt. Moving on to paper 2 there, we have an hour and 30 minutes, 90 marks in question here, 38% of the overall exam, and it's broken up into 3 distinct parts. First of all, the prose, second, the filiacht, and third, the litter. And again, 3 different sets of skills being tested here. We have comprehension, then we have the information that you may need to recall from some of the pieces that you studied over the past couple of years, and then finally we have the letter writing section. And the letter writing / email, it should really be at this stage the refust as well, is, there is a skill in itself in structuring that, and certain phrases that we're going to look at in time that can help you with that. So the total number of marks here, discounting the oral exam, which some of you may have done, it's an optional exam, is worth 240. And we want to look at some small hints and tips as to how you might best get the maximum amount of marks out of that. Some useful websites which you may wish to avail of. Maybe at this stage they mightn't be as useful as they would have been in your previous studies, but some last minute exam preparation from examinations.ie in particular would be very, very useful. And on examinations.ie we have sample papers and of course marking schemes from previous years. We'll touch on them in time, but let's just take a look back at our paper 1. And we'll start with our Clustishkent. So the Clustishkent, or listening comprehension. First of all, we have 40 marks, as we said previously. The 40 marks here are for your understanding of the information. It is an important part of the exam, obviously, and practice up until this stage will have been very, very important. It's possibly not a bad idea to get a little bit of practice on the night before. It may take 20 minutes plus corrections, an additional 10, 15. And if you're looking for something, looking for a resource to help you out there, examinations.ie will help you very much in that regard, because it does have the previous exam papers and of course the soundtrack, as well as the marking schemes. So modula haspa crinish. So as we see here, in relation to any mistakes that you may make with spellings or with grammar, there isn't a huge amount of marks to be lost here. Ráchas nach abertí gart iad agus na ravine elehédi on naileh. Basically, when you make mistakes along the way with your spellings, you're not going to lose any more than a couple of marks. So the really important thing here is to get the answers down, get as many answers down as you can, even if the spelling is slightly out. And I know it sounds, I suppose a little bit off, but to make the spellings, if you're not 100% sure of them, make sure that they're Irish spellings, make sure they're Irish sounding spellings as opposed to English versions. So for example, if you hear a word that ends in A, perhaps, it's an E fada as opposed to an AY, there being no Y in the Irish alphabet. Similarly, if you hear an E, it's an I fada sound. It's very, very important that you write the Irish sounding spelling down if you're not 100% sure of the particular spelling of a word. But just one or two little hints, I suppose. Make sure to understand as many questions as possible, and that's our starting point here. We're going to be taking a look at key question words. Now, what I've done is taken a look for the last kind of 10, 15 years at higher level exam papers and taken a look at the most common types of questions that you'll encounter or students have encountered. And just to make sure that you understand the questions, that's really important. And I suppose we're kind of half an hour work here because when we get to our listening or we get to our reading comprehension, it's the same question words that we find featured there as well. So make sure you answer each question where possible, and through Willafi Hura Moscow, have a guess if needs be. Don't leave any blank spaces. The most you're ever going to get for leaving a blank space is 0. Whereas at least if you have a go at it, you give it a try, and you're close to it, you may be rewarded a mark or possibly 2. So Bikincha Gavragri to Gach Keshta Gaelga, very important point as well. Make sure that you answer each question in Irish, Os Gaelga. You will not get a mark if you answer it in English. A lesson that's been learned on a number of occasions over the years. Very, very good example, clear example of this in recent years, where the answer was radio na Gaeltachta, and students wrote down the English word radio and put in the Gaeltachta afterwards. They would have been awarded 0 marks for that, because radio being an English word, radio, with the different spelling, particularly with the O fada at the end, that's what was required in that instance. So please make sure to make an effort at the Irish spelling and the Irish word, no English whatsoever there. Nigar bit lafragri fada, you don't need to put in big long answers in an awful lot of cases. For example, the most straightforward example of this is with numbers. So if the number is somebody who was born perhaps in 1999, 1999 numerically will do, as opposed to ni j knoka ni written in words. So don't be afraid to cut that down, and as well as that, it'll save you time. And this is a very, very important hint and pointer in regards to this exam. It's all about time. When you sit down, as soon as you're permitted to look at the exam paper, you open it up and you scan down through, highlighting key words, key question words, key phrases in the questions that will help you out. Following that, clochta. Well, to this point, I'm sure you've had lots of clochta, lots of practice along the way, and I'm sure you've had the opportunity to listen to a bit of radio na Gaeltachta, radio na Litha, watch a bit of TG Carr, and of course, it all really adds and really helps to preparing for this exam. As well as that, there are some key words, key phrases, which we're going to take a look at now. And these key words, key phrases are, as I said to you previously, they're question words, they are phrases, they're topics that have been covered in the last 10, 15 years of Clústishcani, I should say, in other words, the listening comprehensions. So it's really, really important that you're tuned into the vocab that goes along with it. You may not understand and may not be able to use every single word that you see on the following list, but to be familiar with them and to know that you need to use them and that they have featured before should be of great help and benefit to you. So first of all, question words that we have here, and I know some of these might seem very, very basic, but just to really make sure that you're on top of it and you understand and are able to use them. So cad and caird being what, and then cain being which or what as well. But cain or, when it's matched up with another word, the meaning changes ever so slightly. So cain or, what time, what at what hour. Cain town, what time. Cain sort, cain size, cain kinnel. The three of them kind of matched up very closely together. What sort, what type, what kind. Cain dinna being person, what person, so therefore who. Cain tale, what fee, in other words, how much. Cain aim, what's the aim of, in other words, if it's perhaps a campaign or an advertisement or whatever happens to be, what's the aim of this particular organisation, in some cases, aggregate. Cain cáileacht, what qualification, perhaps plural cáileachtaí. Cain post, what job. Cain cóirle, what advice. Cain cura, the invitation, so what invitation has been given to somebody. Cain gradam, what award, douche, prize. Gashka, an achievement or a feat. Cain okoid, what occasion. So Cain okoid atá á chéilora is a common enough question. What occasion is being celebrated in this particular piece? Cain spruch data, the deadline for something, or an data gernach, as we've seen in a couple of minutes. Cain curum, what responsibilities will somebody have, or what responsibility does somebody have? Cain tura, what is the result of something? The okoid, the occasion. Agus cain factus, and that's a campaign. So what is the campaign that is being advertised here? And that has featured a number of times in the last few years. Following that, we have some very important key question words, as you can see here in the dark font. And it's really important that you know these, because not being able to understand the question words is really going to make life very, very difficult for you in trying to answer them. You may potentially be answering the wrong piece of information if you don't know the question words. So it's a starting point, it's a very important starting point, and one that you really should be paying attention to, as soon as you're able to open that paper. Get the highlighters out, get the red pens out, underline them. I wouldn't recommend translating, and my opinion would always be that if you can translate it the first time round, well, then you understand it already. So there's no real point. You should be able to translate it the next time the question comes up. So I would strongly suggest not translating and not writing any English on your exam papers. Perhaps if you wanted to, underline or highlight, that would be the preference there. So khe, khe, kheid, when it's masculine, khe, it's who. So who is he or who she, and then he, it's the plural, who are they. Cain fa, why, what reason, literally. Why. Cunus, how. And a good idea here is to try and equate it to a phrase that you might be familiar with already. So for example, cunus atatu, how are you. Cahan, when. Ca, where. And you have a number of different ways that these can be expressed as well. Ca rev in the past tense. Ca mean, continuous present, where does something be. Ca will, where is at the moment, at present. Agus ca meg in the future tense, where will something be. Ca hach, one of the tricky ones here, because we've one or two here that are the question word might throw you a little bit, but the actual meaning of the question is slightly different. So ca hach, what place or where. Next after cad os, from where. Again, a very, very common question. From where does somebody come, or from where is somebody originally from? So cad os, and I know the cad might throw you there a little bit. Similarly, in the next question, ca ad. Ca immediately you would think of where, but ca ad, how long. So how long is something. Kvaid, how much or how many. Anamnig, name. Luig, mention. Braxius, write down. And the three of them kind of very, very similar enough. Cade fadon, what is the length of? Cadaveg shul, and that's one that features quite a lot as well. Shul, so what will be happening, what will be going on. Luig actra awine, mention one event or one instance, perhaps that in the conversation part, or perhaps in an advertisement part in a fogra for a summer camp or for a course that's being run. Cain arch in a ruga a, where was somebody born? Cain Cunde, what county? Lín na Nina, and of course the counties are very important. We're looking at that with place names as well later on. They feature once, if not twice, pretty much every single year. So place names and counties very important there. Cain Cunde, what county? Lín na Nina, the amount of people. So rather than Kvaid, perhaps Lín na Nina, the amount of people mentioned. Okay, atá lucha safisa. Cad the brunach erendina, what was presented to the person. Board stat or aggregate stat, what state board or what state organisation, or perhaps what department. We're taking a look at some vocab to do with that in time as well. Cad data gernach, the final date, or the spruch data, the deadline. Cain old school or collage, perhaps what university is mentioned in the piece. Cain shlin or garan vaha, and that can throw students a little bit when it's not cain post or cain job. So it's what profession, okay? So what profession or garan vaha. So in other words, what job. Anamig grupa, no dram a wine, and again with different dialects, different conunty, we get different phrases for pretty much the same thing. Grupa and dram meaning the same thing. What name a group of people. Cain douche, what prize. Torpisa a wine, Olish, give one piece of information, because off lay is under discussion or being discussed. So again, that may feature in a question. Cain dinner or Cain skull or Cain collage, that off lay is being discussed. So they're just some very important question words, and it's of course your starting point. It's the first thing you'll see in the exam paper, and I'd highly recommend that you underline and perhaps just to draw your own attention to them before the soundtrack actually starts. So following that, some very, very important phrases as well, basic enough, but usually, and as I said, over the last 10, 15 years, phrases that have featured fairly prominently in the exam. So first of all, anything to do with school. Be it subject-wise, and on the screen in front of you there, you can see a large number of different subjects, with Gaeilge, Béarla, Math, Start, Tiroliacht. So familiarise yourself not only with the subjects that you study yourself, but subjects that you may not study. They may be the ones that catch you out, and hopefully not. Obviously, the type of school as well, be it a Gael school or a Nímara, Bun school, Man school, Garm school, all very important phrases as well. The type of school, that's been a question in the past as well. As we go down through the list there, we have third level, second level institutions. So for example, to do with be it a Coláiste or an old school or an institute technoliachta, in IT, it's very important that you have those phrases too. And at the bottom of the list there, we have some phrases that have to do with qualifications and phrases that have to do with exams. So on our test or an our test America, the Leaving Cert, on Chasta Socialk, as you well know yourself, junior certificate, old school Coláiste, came of Wintamach, that's a degree, to get a degree in something or to achieve a degree in something. Diploma, again, just the spelling, the Ófada, keep an eye out for it. Chastas, a certificate, August Mástrucht, which is a master's. So it's really important, as I said there, that you're familiar with the vocab to do with school and to do with education, because it is a topic that features fairly heavily. Moving on to the man conversaja, and that's the media. Some of the media outlets that we have, you may not be overly familiar with, and it is important that you're tuned into, because again, they feature pretty much every single year. You'll have either Radio Telefís Éireann, and again, the spelling is very important here, that you get it as close as possible. Radio na Gaeltachta, Radio na Drav, Radio na Lifa, Radio Rírá, just to mention a few of the radio stations. TG Car, and it is okay, just write TG Car, doesn't have to be Telefís na Gaeilge, or TG Car would be absolutely fine. Nuachta Car, Nuacht an Léithúil, daily newspaper perhaps, Styra, Came, Dramer. So basically, those kind of phrases will be quite important. Similarly, at the end there, we have Lairhor, so we have TV presenters, and name the TV presenter in question. That might be a potential question there. We have on Nua Hecnoliacht, it's becoming more and more important, more and more prevalent in these exams as well, phrases to do with technology. So obviously some very basic ones, Rivra Gluna, we have Gohan, might catch some students out, it's exactly the same word as phone, so Gohan or phone, keep an ear out for it. Clishta or glick, again, some people would use that for smartphone, so phone clishta or phone glick. It really depends on your preference, your personal preference, or phone polka even. Refust being an email, tweet, and again, TVU, IFADT, it's relatively new, I know, but you do need to be familiar with it. On Tiderlín, the internet, Sieve being a website, or Sieve Grayson, website I should say, Lathnach Ballia, homepage, Punk, and of course that Punk just being the dot, the full stop, Úslódál or Íslódál, to upload or to download, Shrupio, as we are on at the moment, is a live stream, Skylon being a screen, Merklar being a keyboard, app or appana, when you're talking about apps, Tablaid, agus Ilvanach multimedia. So again, keep an ear out for them. The spellings are important, but it's really to be familiar with them more than anything else. Other than that, we have some Agriachtaí. The Agriachtaí are the organisations, particularly organisations that promote the Irish language, that promote young people in their use of the Irish language and culture as well. So we have a number of them that are mentioned here: Bord na Gaeilge, Cunra na Gaeilge, Gael Lynn, Glór na Gael, Bus Éireann, Údaras na Gaeltachta, Scór na Nóg, Codal na Siúnta na Gaeilge, Cór na Múntóirí Gaeilge, Iartas na Gaeilge has featured very, very prominently in the last few years as well. Make sure you have the spelling down for that. Coltas Ceoltóirí Éireann, some of you may be members of it. Make sure again to pay particular attention to the spelling there. Cumann Lú Class Gael, is the GAA, Gaelic Athletic Association. Cumann Rugby na Héireann, Cumann Soccer na Héireann, sporting organisations. So the next section that we need to look at here is on Aimsir, the weather. The weather, does feature quite prominently as well, and there are a number of phrases that you'll definitely need to have. And it's not as simple as beg sé curbáistí or beg sé te, or the very, very kind of basic phrases you need. They're actually phrases that would feature in your normal everyday weather forecasts, be it on TG Car, Radio na Gaeltacht, or any of the other stations that we mentioned above. So some phrases that can help you out here. We have Réamhaisnéis na Haimsire, or an Aimsir Loirach, as it's more commonly known these days. So it's the weather forecast. Areas of the country, very important as well. Tushkart, Deshkart, Natira, the north or south of the country. Irher agus Irher, the west, or the east and the west, I should say, respectively. Began Green Tanov is again basic enough, and I'd expect that it'd be a little bit more challenging than that. Something along the lines of Iroishe, it will become sunny, it will become wet, it will become cold in the evening, perhaps at Tranona or Saniha. Ekur or Extalabashti, no Schnachta, so it'll be raining or it'll be lashing rain or snow. Tet for obviously warm and cold, it's very, very basic there. On choked, the spelling of it can put people off, that's the temperature. And it's Ord being high, or Ishil being low, or Greenver, sunny. Fwyn Row Frincha, again, one to keep an eye out for, below freezing point. It's one that you may not be aware of to date, but it's one that has featured in previous years. Ucht Gain Celsius, and again, looking over here, Uru there in the GC, so Ucht Gain Celsius, 8 degrees Celsius. Galchheim Jeg Celsius, and again, it's just, it splits the number basically. Galchheim Jeg, as you can see there, 2 degrees and 10, so 12 degrees Celsius. Cahanabashti, showers of rain. Shuk, being frost. Tilche, floods. Fuyishka, submerged underwater. Boher Contortica, and these kind of phrases feature more so, and the questions tend to really focus on the conditions and what has happened as a result of the conditions. So Boher Contortica, dangerous roads. Schlauen, slippery. Lack ice. Creen Lagha, trees have been felled. Guifer or Gala Force Ashe, so Begshe Guifer, Begshe it'll be windy. Gala Force Ashe, gale force 6. Stirmule, Tornach, Tintruk, thunder, lightning. Scamalach, cloudy, Kyo, and again, the marsh of the Hiha agus the Irgan of damage to houses and buildings. Chucky or Riv, so it will become or something will happen, and Riv before. And again, one or two phrases that you wouldn't that you really should be kind of tuned into there. Bracken Lay is at the dawn of the day. Lean the Graina, dusk. Pranach, something that's urgent. Tubishta is a disaster, and Timpishta an accident, and they'll all feature fairly strongly when the weather forecast, particularly when you're talking about inclement weather or bad weather conditions, and perhaps an accident that's happened as a result. So just to keep an eye out for that, and of course, notices from the Gardaí or notices from Met Éireann or something along those lines. This is where they'll feature fairly commonly. Okay, so following that, we have Pulatori agus Cursi Raha. I don't want to spend too much time on it because it features once every couple of years, but just to make sure that you're tuned into the vocab such as An Rialtas, the government, Shockline, Leinster House, Dáil Éireann, and Shannon, the Dáil, the Shannon, Áras an Uachtarán, and again, just keep an eye for the spelling there as well, or An Tuachtarán, the president, An Taoiseach, An Tánaiste, Teachta Dála, TD, Antara, who's the minister for something, and again features maybe once every couple of years. Shanador, the senator, maybe perhaps people making a presentation to a particular group or organisation. Ol Taochan, a general election, or Taochan, an election. And after that, really, I wouldn't be overly worried about the next particular line there. They don't feature quite as much. But one or two departments perhaps to keep an ear out for will be the Ryan Aline, Oireachta agus Gaeltachta, so the Department of Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht. Ryan Idicus agus Skillina, so again you're listening out for the Department of Education and Skills. Arganish, Finance agus Sláinte, just one or two of the ones that have featured more prominently in recent times. Following that, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time going through them, just to make sure that you're familiar with them. Loganamnacha, so basically, once a year, one question pretty much every year, they ask for a place name. And obviously we have a fairly comprehensive list of them here, and I'll let you just read through them for yourselves there, and just to make sure that you're familiar. And really, just add to that as well, to make sure that your counties, make sure you have the spellings of the counties. What tends to happen at higher level in particular is that you don't get the full mark if, let's say for example, as we look at Ulster there, if it's Killybegs, Nakellabaga, if you say Doonangel, you may get half the marks, you may get 1 mark, as opposed to Nakellabaga, Doonangel, which you get the full complement of marks there. So it's very important that you have the most accurate place name possible, as opposed to the more general county that it belongs to. So in following that, we have some jobs and some perhaps qualifications that go along with those jobs. And One of the features of the listening comprehension tends to be a job that needs to be filled, or perhaps a course that somebody's pursuing, or a job that a parent has. So it's advisable that you be tuned into that as well. There's a fairly comprehensive list there, and I'd strongly recommend that you take a look over them. Obviously, the amount of time that we have to go through them here, it wouldn't be ideal to go through absolutely every single one of them. But as you can see on your screens there, we have a fairly long list of them. One or two things that I would draw your attention to, however, is just at the bottom of the list here, we have, for example, Lalina to be filled, Fulluntas, which is a vacancy, Furum Iritish, an application form, Shoal Iritish Quig, send an application to. And these may feature in the question as opposed to the actual script itself. Spruch dot, the deadline, dot the journal, the last date. So of course then your date comes into play, and all you need there, as I said to you previously, numbers, perhaps the number and the month, but you don't need to write out the full date in words. Numbers will suffice. After that we have qualifications, atá riach nocht fust. That may feature in a question, just so it doesn't throw you too much. Qualifications that are necessary for the job, and you may need to, or perhaps traits or characteristics that a person should have. And again, there are one or two little pieces of information here that may be of use to you. Our test chas social, as we saw previously, came old school, university degree, bun tishkent basic understanding, skill na riverukta, computer skills, tahi ibra, work experience, Gaelge Lifa, fluent Irish, Sarah Cummas, Lauert agus Scríb na Gaelge. So Sarah Cummas, a fantastic level, a very high standard of spoken and written Irish. The Irhor is the applicant, and again, person talk to personality. Of course, the Arga agus Pa to do with money and to do with pay. Other things that may feature and have featured previously, phrases or keywords such as Rooney, Bonistor, secretary, manager, Colocht being a company, Cumann Carnachta, a charitable organisation, Tahi experience, Chunskville, the industry, and the Monarcha, perhaps a factory, and again, phrases that have all featured in recent years. Other subjects that you may have come across already and you should be familiar enough with, Cáimhimse, Léinn Sira, agus Timpiste, and they tend to feature more so in the conversational part, which is in Quid B. But it's well worth your while to have gotten a fair bit of practice in on these. If you fancy, as I said, a last bit of practice, you can go to examinations.ie, and on examinations.ie, it's just a case of following the drop-down menu, and in your drop-down menu, you'll find paper 1 and paper 2, and you'll also find the option for the sound files. So if you click on exam papers, followed by the year, I'm taking a look at 2015 for all of the exam papers that we're looking through today. 2016 being last year, the likelihood of questions featuring exactly as they did the previous year is very, very slim. So we go back a further year to perhaps questions that may be a little bit more like the ones that will hopefully feature on your exams in the coming days. So we take a look at junior certificate, junior cycle, and then we take a look at the option for Gaeilge. As you can see here, we have our sound files. It's not the foundation level, it's a common sound file between ordinary and higher, as I'm sure you're all very aware. Click on that and have a listen. And if it's an area that you've been struggling with, well, why not go to the marking scheme as well? And in the marking scheme, what you'll find is that we have the script. So the script features for each of these pieces in the listening comprehensions. So for example here, our piece of Nuachta, the piece of Nuachta, Venus Lucha, Ilaha, Rikfeila, Rakarna, Agunda Nami, that's the actual piece from 2015, section C, question 2. So the script is there if you need to read through it. If you're really struggling with these, it's an area that causes you quite a lot of difficulty and you just want a last minute kind of practice. And as well as that, when you've answered the questions, the answers are actually on this document as well, as are all of the answers for the reading comprehensions and for your grammar questions, which we're moving swiftly on to next. So following that, we have our Leif Hishkent. Now Leif Hishkent features in paper 1. Paper 1 is broken down into 3 very distinct parts. And as I mentioned at the top of this class, we do need to take a look at our timing. So ideally, the ideal scenario here for you with your reading comprehensions is to try and save time. Now, before you start on your reading comprehension, I would strongly recommend that you read through the paper, first of all. That may take anything between 2 to 5 minutes. And I'd strongly recommend that the majority of that 2 to 5 minutes is spent looking at the Capadoric section. And when you take a look over the options that you have in your Capadoric section, it's a good idea to make your decision or to loosely make your decision. You're not 100% committed to it as to what question it is that you're going to tackle, what question is you're going to plan for. And at least then, while you're doing your listening or your reading comprehension, and while you're answering the questions on the grammar-based section, the Tríla Changa, Coheg Sula, at least then you can be formulating answers in your own mind. Subliminally, you will be doing quite a lot of work. You don't realise it, but you will be doing quite a lot of work in the planning of this, be it scale or alt or diasporic. So, as you read through the paper, you'll see the last section here is Ryan Carr, Keshta Tree, Capadoric. And the options that we have here, we always have 5 options in section A, and that's your Ashta no alt nuachtan no irisha, and that's pretty much a straight essay. And what's important here is expressing opinion and sharing your opinions in relation to the topic that's being discussed. We'll get back to the planning of it and get back to the layout of it in time. The scale is slightly different, and again, we'll take a look at that in time.